This is Kieran with my co-host,
Roken.
with episode 2 of Dragonbone Tavern Podcast, all about gaming. And this week, we're doing this weekly at this point, and we're continuing our series on the Elder Scrolls game. We're going to be into Oblivion, and we'll wrap it up with Morrowind next week. As for our site, right now, I've got profile pages pretty much down, and then I'll be moving on to working on the forums in a little bit. So, yeah, that's basically all that's really happened, not much. We have no mail from any of you because we just put the episodes up yesterday. Yeah, I'm a horrible person. I was trying to get them up earlier, but I just didn't get the time. And actually, we want to take a minute. Roken here is part of another podcast that he does with a friend. Do you want to talk a little bit about something else that your friend does, or it might be the same podcast?
Sure, I'll go off on a tangent for just a couple seconds here. I have a good buddy of mine named SirDog33 on YouTube.com. He does a whole bunch of cool gamer reviews. He does game reviews. He does commentary while he plays. All kinds of cool stuff. Tips, hints, cheat codes, Easter eggs, you name it. He probably does a video on it. All kinds of popular games. Call of Duty, Battlefield, Oblivion. All kinds of other good stuff. And once again, that is SirDog, SIRDOG 33. The number 3 followed by the number 3 at youtube.com. If you please help me out by checking him out and subscribing to his videos, I'd be much appreciated. Okay, I'm good.
Okay, I'll also put a link to his YouTube account in our episode notes. Maybe we can see if we can get him one of these times to come and do a cast with us. That would be fun. But that's basically all that we have to start off the podcast, so we're going to move right along into our mod section. Since we're talking about Oblivion, I thought I'd talk about an Oblivion mod. Wow. There are a lot of Oblivion mods, and it's really kind of hard to pick some of the best ones, so I've picked one that I pretty much have had for a long time. It was probably one of the better mods to get werewolves into your Oblivion game, since Oblivion was the game that they took it out for. I'm not really sure why, other than the fact that if you go through the whole game, they're supposed to be gone completely. So I'm really kind of fuzzy on how they got back in Skyrim, but anyways, it's called Curse of the Hurricane, and the original mod eventually went down. And they stopped updating it, so there's Curse of the Hurricane Resurrected that you can find if you go to the Test Nexus. That's usually a good place to get a lot of mods. They also have a spot for Dragon Age Origins. But this mod added a whole crapload of stuff. You could get turned into a werewolf. They were spawned just about like any other random monster in the game. And another cool thing was there were also werewolf hunters. So you could either kill werewolves or you could become one, and these hunters would eventually come after you. So the game was pretty cool in that respect. It had a lot of side mods that went along with it that added new functionalities. There was even a thing that you could get to replace the main menu, though that only works if you have a 4x3 monitor, like 800x600, etc. A normal monitor. Doesn't really work on widescreens. It stretches the image and makes it look horrible, or it adds huge bars. But other than that, they did release a new version not that long ago. It was around the time of the release of Skyrim. It is a final version of the mod. I don't think there's really going to be any more updates for it because of the added content in Skyrim. So this mod's pretty much dead, but Oblivion's kind of been a dead game, and only people who haven't got Skyrim yet really play it. So, but if you want to have werewolves in Skyrim, that's a good mod to check out. If you want any other interesting mods, I would be happy to suggest them, but I don't actually have most of them on my computer anymore, so I can't really give many off the top of my head. There was a good magic one that I'd have to look up again, but so Oblivion's really a good game for mods because it's been out for a while. So if you really want good mods, check up on the Test Nexus. Probably one of the better mods is Curse the Hurricane, though. Got any comments on it? I'm pretty sure you haven't actually had any run-ins with this mod, but first opinion?
My first opinion, I like werewolves.
Werewolves make every game better.
Almost every game. Twilight would have been fine without them.
It still made Twilight better.
Well, I guess it does kick the ass of a sparkly vampire.
Exactly. Even if the story in general is terrible, it still makes it better. You have to look on the bright side.
Wait, there's a bright side of Twilight? I thought it was like Bella Swan's attitude.
Okay, we're not talking about its actual... Yeah, no. Okay, we're not talking about Twilight. We're not going that direction.
Well, I'm not paid to not talk about Twilight, now am I?
You're not paid at all.
My point has been proven.
Okay, but yeah, so check out Curse of the Hurricane, and we're going to move on to actually Oblivion. And I'm probably going to reference a little bit of Skyrim in this because, in my opinion, Skyrim was a better game. But to give you the basic idea, in Oblivion, it takes place, you are in Cyrodiil, the main capital of the Imperials. And you start off in prison, like in every Elder Scrolls game. And you go through a beginner dungeon where you meet the Emperor. And it also helps you get used to playing the game. It's its whole tutorial thing, and it's also your character creation, like Morrowind was, but it's kind of a little bit bland. It's a little bit more interesting than Morrowind, but a lot blander than Skyrim. So give and take, they progressively got better at their character creation. But there was a lot of pauses in the game where you'd be asked questions and you'd answer them. Still filling out the same information, it's just a little bit more spread out than it was in Morrowind. They took most of that out for Skyrim because of the way they had the game run. Replacing your what sign you were born under with the Guardian Stones and all kinds of things like that. So the beginning's kind of a little bit slow, but it is necessary because they start talking about the actual Oblivion. Oblivion is the plane of existence where the Daedra, basically their demons, are. And supposedly the Emperor was having dreams, and if you read more into lore, they talk about it a little bit here and there. The Emperor is supposed to know more than other men. A little bit of a tie towards Skyrim is the fact that the Emperor was actually just one of the Dragonborn, like what you play in Skyrim. But you start off the game after that, and you have to go find the last heir, who you don't know exactly why, but you kind of question whether he was a bastard son or something like that. But no one actually knew that he was an heir. Not even him once you meet him. But you go to the city of Kvatch, and you find that Kvatch has been overrun by Daedra, and there are portals opening. and no one really knows why. You start getting hints there that it might be because there is no emperor at this point in time. With the death of Uriel Septim, it leaves the throne empty, and the dragon fire, which is lit at every coronation, goes dark for the first time in several hundred years. I don't remember exactly the year count. So basically, the game is getting all these portals and basically taking out the portals to the Daedra realm. And the storyline's kind of interesting, but I honestly never got through it. I eventually broke down and had someone else tell me what the ending was, and I'm not going to spoil it here, but it would have been cool to see, but it wasn't that interesting enough for me to play through the whole game. The mods were more of a big point of playing that one. They were more interesting than the actual storyline, sad to say. The storyline wasn't bad, it just didn't hold my attention. You eventually were running around a lot, and really, if you didn't run around a lot, you didn't get the experience you needed to do anything, so it just became a big pain. You were always below the level you really needed to be to do something, so and that really doesn't come into effect until a lot later in Skyrim, so eventually, yes, you do get to a point where you need to go do some other things to get some levels, but that's way further in the game. You can generally avoid other fights that if they're too high level, because there are some things that you have to do that you're a little bit low level, and if you didn't do anything else other than the main quest, but you can usually avoid it, run away, do something else, and but most of the stuff in Oblivion you were kind of forced into, so that really hurts my opinion of Oblivion. I still like the game a lot. It's really open world, and like I said, there are a lot of great mods out there. There's mods like Total Tamriel, which adds the rest of the world of the Elder Scrolls to it. Though the issue is most of that world's still empty. It's only adding the height map, which there were supposed to be mods that eventually added in everything else, but there were only a couple that added some of the southern and added buildings for Skyrim. Most of the rest of the world was still empty, and you still had to get some other mods to remove the borders that were naturally put in the game. So, I'm not saying Oblivion. I'm not saying Oblivion's a bad game, it's just the main storyline was kind of dull. I'd have to say I liked Shivering Isles a lot better, and I got almost done with Shivering Isles, but I lost my save and I was almost done with it, so I really didn't care to go back again. Knights of the Nine was fairly interesting. I got most of the way through that, but the same game I went to Shivering Isles, and I got far enough to get the armor, and then I went to Shivering Isles, and then never managed to get back that far. So, the game's a lot of fun, and I do recommend it. It's just it's a little slow at the beginning. I don't think you've ever actually played it, Roken. How much have you seen of it?
I've actually played a little bit of the Skyrim series, but as for Oblivion, that what we're talking about right now?
Yeah, Oblivion.
As for Oblivion, I've seen people play it, family, of course, on the 360. So, computer version, I've seen none of. But as for the 360 version, graphics are good. It looks like a pretty easily used interface. Looks very user-friendly, but I don't know too much about it. And I generally like the look of the game. I would have liked to play it. However, my computer, if people don't already know, is a POS.
Yeah. I will give it that. It's now getting to the point where it's not as stunning and graphics-wise because it is a little bit older, but it did when it came out, and it's still fairly nice graphics. But when it came out, it was stunning. And that's one thing that the Elder Scrolls has managed to keep up, is the fact that whenever they decide to make a game, it is stunning in every aspect. Um, it's just Oblivion was a long game, and you easily got sidetracked with side quests and other things. You really didn't care to finish the game. Mind you, this was only me. I know a lot of people who did finish the game and were completely happy with it. So don't take my opinion on how long the storyline was bad. It's a little bit long for me personally. I got bored with it and kind of moved on. I still play it, and I've played it multiple times. Um, but it's just you easily get sidetracked with other things. You never really get, and there are a lot of people who get the main quest done, but I never did. I got fairly far in the main. Well, not really fairly far. I only got to pass like I think the second Oblivion gate was when I stopped really paying attention to the storyline, which is a good distance into the game, but not at the end. It was just a long game. Do you got any opinions on anything else that you know about Oblivion? Anything you know about the mods or anything?
As far as Oblivion and mods go, I've got no other comments.
Okay. Um, Marwin's gonna be another day where he's gonna be fairly quiet because you don't know much about Morrowind either, do you?
I can't even spell the name, to be fully honest.
Can you spell Oblivion?
Last time I checked, I wasn't in class.
My point is proven. Anyways,
I
but
can spell Twilight just fine.
yeah, that basically wraps us up right now. There isn't much else to say about Oblivion. It is a good game. You should try it out if you haven't. It is different than Skyrim. Do not expect them to be the exact same. A lot of the systems were changed. Another thing that was a little disappointing is you can only wield one weapon in Oblivion, or you can have a weapon and a shield, or you can have a spell. You can't dual wield things like you do in Skyrim, but that's alright still. So, basically, my opinion of the game overall is fairly good. It's just there are a lot of things that could be better, which they managed in Skyrim. If you'd never seen Skyrim, never heard about Skyrim, Oblivion would be an amazing game. And I think that wraps us basically up for Oblivion. And we're going to move into our last little segment here about our game ideas. This show is running a little short, but there's not as much to talk about, really, because Oblivion kind of got a little bit of mushed into Skyrim. Skyrim, a lot of the things that we talked about last week about Skyrim play into Oblivion. How the system works. The only real big difference is the leveling system, where you start off with certain skills being higher. Unlike in Skyrim, it's all based on your usage. Nothing starts with anything. So that's really one of the big differences. The way you get your signs and the fact that you can change them in Skyrim, that's another difference. But the core mechanics of the game are really kind of the same. The quests really are kind of the same. There's still fast traveling in Oblivion. And the only thing that really is different is the fact that getting a house in Oblivion is a lot harder, or costs a lot more money, and you're not as presented with it as easy. And the fact of the shouts and things that were specific to the Dragonborn aren't really presented in.
If I might add, Foodora.
And you slaughtered that horribly. Yeah, if you've ever actually played Skyrim, he I think was mentioning Fus Roda. And that's the first shout you learn in Skyrim, and it's pretty iconic for most people who have played the game. So yeah, Oblivion was pretty much covered a lot last week. So we're gonna move on to our last section about game ideas. Do you got anything interesting for us?
I've got something in the making, but nothing I'm willing to reveal yet.
Nothing you're willing to reveal?
Hmm.
I'm debating on whether I should reveal anything about the game yet. But actually, I'm going to go over something. This was something I did talk a little bit about if you've seen our old podcast, so this might be a little bit of. It'd be more of a refresher because it's been a while since I talked about it. It was a little bit of an interesting thing because the game I'm working on, we're working on, is an MMO. And the one thing that gets me about MMOs is a lot of MMOs, you play a character, then you play the same quests over. Just make a new character, just play it again and again. Every new character you're playing through the same quests. That gets kind of boring.
But it does make it really easy to get to the beginner quest, and you know how like the back of your hand.
Yeah, but also I'd find it a lot more interesting if really just to give you choice there you can always have the path that's always exactly the same. That have quests that literally every time they're never exactly there because they're only there once and then they get replaced by a new quest set. And this came up with an idea that was rotating basically a pack of quests. Once all the quests were done, or basically all of them, it may keep a few that hadn't been done, but once it gets down to a certain number of quests were done, a certain percentage, it would move on to the next quest pack, and just keeping the couple few that hadn't been finished yet in memory. And that I thought would be a lot easier and a lot nicer because then you're not having to do the same quests over and over. But yeah, for some people there would be certain ways to get the exact same quest because they like doing that. They like the repetition. And a couple of other things that I talked about doing was I've not really doing professions the same as everyone else.
I'd like to just go ahead and interject here and reel you back in.
This is part of game ideas. It's not reeling back in.
All right, well, if you say so, continue then.
Okay. Um, but I talked about how I wanted to do professions, and the one thing that's always bothered me about most games is the fact of if I spend my whole life and all my life savings on a game, I can be the best. Where someone who probably plays the game 10 times better can always they'll still be noticeably a little bit better, but they'll still lose the person who's spent forever on the game. Not saying there's anything wrong with playing a game often, but I made most of my systems based on skill, and if you've played it more, you probably have a better skill at it, but you can still have skill based on. So I took, if you've ever played any of the Fable games, specifically 2 and 3, they do professionings based on a skill, timing, and things like that. They're kind of like little mini games, but take those little mini games and put them into the applicable grounds of the game, allowing you to do your professions that way, and then it's actually doing something. You can actually do something instead of just going, whoops, I've, done 600 mining and I'm level 300. I mined 600 veins, and it took you nothing to really do it. So, that's probably the most I'm really going to say about it, because I do want to keep a lot of that kind of under wraps, because I have worked a lot on this game, and I don't, not saying that any of you would take it, but I still don't want it all out there. People do steal ideas all the time. And I think that about wraps us up, unless Cameron has any comments that he wants to share about any game ideas or mechanic ideas.
I, of course, as always, have none.
Any comments on what I said?
No comments. No, not particularly, no.
Okay. So yeah, that wraps us up, and this is Kieran and my co-host
Broken.
signing off.
Have a great day.